Hi, I'm Josh rushing in for Femi OK. In the 7 months since the Taliban took power in Afghanistan, the economy has been in a free fall. Millions are facing hunger, and women's rights have been deeply eroded. On today's show, what is life like for Afghan women? Since August 2021, the Taliban has been banned from Afghan women from most paid employment, hindered women's free movement, shut down and abolished the Ministry of Women's Affairs, and silenced female journalists. Access to education has been especially hampered. Less than 1/3 of Afghan's 34 provinces have allowed girls' schools to reopen, and secondary classes, due to start later this week, face strict conditions. Here to share more, Pashtana Durrani is an educator and the director for Learn Afghanistan. She's currently in Massachusetts in the U.S. Storai Ahmadi is a program coordinator at Women for Women International. She's in the U.K. And in Germany, Zarifa Ghaffari is a human rights activist and economist. She's also the former mayor of the city of Maidan Shar. Oh, there's one last seat at the table, and that is for you. You can follow along in our live YouTube chat and see that box over there? You can send your questions to me so I can get them in the panel, and you too can be in the stream. All right, so I want to begin with this report from Women for Women International, which Story you're a part of. It says, no one hears our voices. This just came out. And it's basically what's changed in Afghanistan since the Taliban took over. Some of the key questions here. Let's scroll down. Here we go. How has your weekly income changed? Over half the income has dropped to zero. And the other half say it's been reduced. Okay, how would you describe food security in your household? 2/3 say often not enough to eat. 1/3 say sometimes not enough to eat. Have you received assistance, community from the government or organizations or individuals? 95% say no. Story, can you tell us a bit about how this survey was conducted and a little bit about what you thought were some of the most important top lines or items to come out of it?
Thank you for the question, Josh. Following the Taliban takeover Afghanistan in August 2021 and the subsequent humanitarian and economic crisis affecting the country, there has been many conversation about Afghan women without including or talking to Afghan women themselves. This is why Women for Women International program adaptation and policy recommendation are directly based on inputs from Afghan women. We spoke with 80 women across Afghanistan. We also spoke with women rights organizations and women activists, and 100% of them reported that their household financial situation had deteriorated and they did not have enough to eat. 97% of women reported that they have restriction on their freedom, and 91% of women reported that they need greater psychosocial supports, and for months they have not left home. When we talked with women rights organizations, they said they want solution for economic crisis and they want their rights. But there is one overarching message emerged from this research that international community has an important role to play by exercising its power and include a woman and future decision making.
You know, I want to bring in a voice of an Afghan woman here. She's the former mayor of Herat, and she sent us this video comment about what it's like there now.
During the past 20 years, women in Afghanistan have had access to education and training, which allowed them to work and contribute at a high level. Being able to work at a high level gives women the ability to feel that as human beings, they are living to their full capacity and contributing to their country. This attitude shifted and backslided with the regime change. And we, as women, are no longer able to work as freely or reach our potential as people. However, our request and desire from the current regime is to take positive strides in regards to women and their ability to work, and in terms of their training and education.
I want to go from one former mayor to another. Zarifa, you had to flee the country, but chose recently to go back and visit. You're back out of Afghanistan again. Can you tell us, what was it like to go back, and what were your experiences?
Thank you, Josh. Actually, going back to Afghanistan after for first time after leaving the country, and I guess for me was a great experience. It was more about how I came on with information on the ground, with talking to different groups, women, children, and men. It was amazingly a big change in the country. The moment I came out of airport, I was like, I was just trying to find the same Kabul or maybe the same country which I left in August back, which I felt, and I couldn't exactly find that. The most important topic is the humanitarian crisis, the way the big amount of women just standing in front of a bakery in Kabul city for just one bread is heartbreaking. Looking to a big amount of girls and women which are still waiting for their schools, for their jobs, for their, like, they don't know what the future is for them, was really kind of a big shock for me personally. But as in past 6 months as well, I have been working on the topics and closely with the women around the country. So I knew that it's a big shock, and it will be that way, which I saw it already. But going to the countryside, going to a far from village from Kabul, where like past 20 years as well, there was like no kind of assistance or services reach the ground to the people in that village. The people of that village, I saw they were still living in 100 years ago, a life of
100 years ago.
A life which is like so different than so many
Zarifa,
parts of other countries.
That's not what the Taliban promised, though. The Taliban promised to defend women's rights under Islamic law, and now this week is a big test of that, right? Pastana, when we're talking about the secondary schools open, we want to see if the girls are going to go back to school, and not just in the cities, but as Zarifa was saying, you know, out in the country, in the more rural areas. What should we expect to see as secondary schools open? Pastana?
So the secondary schools that we are talking about, just so you know, they are not opening in warmer regions. They're only opening in the northern regions, which were open, by the way, back in the day too, when the Taliban came into power. My province right now and the whole southern region that I'm talking to, none of them have started with the schools. 18 schools in Kandahar right now are not told to open tomorrow for the girls. Their doors will be closed for the girls. That is the city I'm talking about. And apart from that, because there was war, because these people were controlling the rural areas, the girls in rural areas never got to go to school. So today, when they claim that war is over, why are the rural areas girls still not able to go to school? Why are the girls in the city not going to school? Saying that, like, you know, giving ultimatum to the international community and then telling them that we are doing good on that part is fooling the international community and the people, anyone who's watching them, that the schools were open in the northern regions even in December, and they closed down just for the winter vacations. And the same thing is happening even now. It's just opening in northern regions. It's not happening opening in the southern region. And the whole international community is thinking that it's going to open for southern region too, or any other warmer region, honestly. But it's not. Taliban are still not on the same page when it comes to girls' rights, when it comes to girls' education, and what women rights are they defending under the Sharia law? The fact that women activists are still missing, the fact that girls' schools, young girls, today is one of those days where I'm losing my faith on humanity as I talk, because no matter how much optimistic picture one can sell of Afghanistan, no matter how many hundreds of girls I can put in schools, it just breaks my heart that a whole region of school of girls won't be able to go to school tomorrow just because a few men came into power and don't think it's appropriate for their region to go to school.
I also want to add to what Pashtana has added. Based on the research we have conducted, the top recommendation from women is that the international community should hold accountable their government for the commitments they made to start schools till end of March and have investment on teachers and education infrastructure.
Story, speaking of the international community and recommendations for the international community, I want to go to the Human Rights Watch here. This is Heather Barr, and here's what she had to say.
The Taliban have been denying millions of girls access to secondary school for over 7 months now, so it's excellent news that they've said they'll reopen those schools this week. But it's no time to cheer and move on. It's urgently important that the international community do 3 things. First, verify that these schools actually are opened. Second, look at a broader set of issues related to access to education, including, are the teachers being paid? Are the Taliban harassing teachers and students? And is the curriculum being changed in harmful ways? And then third, donors have to recognize that you can't separate education from other types of women's rights violations. So for example, the Taliban are banning women from most forms of employment, and girls are going to be much less motivated to study if they're not going to be able to have the career that they're preparing for.
And just to add on this, when Heather says all that stuff, you have to understand, and including Soraya, right? When you create an industry that is all humanitarian aid industry and there is no alternative to it, you can't just deny the fact that the whole international community, when they withdrew from Afghanistan, there won't be any employment left for them. That's the first thing. There is no money there because there are no organizations left in Afghanistan to serve that. That's the first thing that we need to understand as a common person in Afghanistan, that most of the jobs were humanitarian industry based. The second thing is, why are the Taliban claiming that girls' schools will open and they are still not opening in the regions that I just told you about, but at the same time the schools open for boys? Like, what is the difference? I need to understand. And also, like, the career choices, just like Heather said, right, there are career choices for boys. That's why they are motivated to go to school. But what about girls and women who are supposed to work? The only way that Afghan women tomorrow will be in workspaces after everything that happened would be in a school, in a public working space. It's horrifying to think that that's the only job left in Afghanistan for women, especially in some regions, not even in a whole Afghanistan uniformly.
Hey, jump in there.
To add on a story, and Pashtana as well and Hyderabad. Actually, when we are talking about opening schools for girls around the, it's not that we have it, because the population of women.
Hey, Zarifa, I think we have a connection issue right now with your audio. Let's hold on just a second, see if we can get that fixed, because I want to hear what you have to say. In the meantime, Story, I'm going to throw this question to you. This is from Charles Preston. He's in our YouTube live chat right now, and he's asked, what should Western governments do to pressure the Taliban to hold them more accountable? Story?
Yes. Based on the research that came from women and women rights organizations, they do not have the power, the leverage, the resources, like they don't have anything. But what international community has, they have everything. Like they can hold them accountable for the commitments that they made. This is my response. Like they have everything, and they can get involved. They can get in negotiation, get in dialogue with the de facto government, and can hold them accountable.
Zarifa, I think we have your audio issue sorted. Can you tell us what you were saying there again?
Yeah, actually, I was saying that if we are talking about opening for girls, then we need to talk about how many more schools we have around the country and how much of them are self-functioning the same way that we need it for women in the country, especially for girl child in the country. Like example, in the same village which I have been to a few days ago, there was just one primary school, which was still students studying in an open area in a very, like in a house which was quiet, but the ground was having some carpets and they were studying there. So like when we are talking about education for girls in Afghanistan, we have to just accept that and admit that we don't have that properly limit of services to all needed women and girls of being educated around the country. But at the same time, when we are talking about, as Pashana said, there is like two different sides of the country, like the warm weather and the cold weather side. So that's also having a problem right now. And the more important thing that still we have so many places that we don't have that primary schools as well open for all girls.
Zarifah, here's the thing. If Taliban can take money from customs in Spinboldak, if they can take money in Nangarhar, in Torkham, right? If they can take all that tax money and they're okay with that, if they're okay with taking the same money from the Balkh area and also all the northern areas when it comes to the border regions, they're okay with all those custom money, right? They're taking all that money. The Human Rights Watch, the same report, if you study it, it says that 3,500 Afghani is being given to Afghan teachers and the rest is being taken by the Taliban. Why? Because they say it's tax money, which me and you, we both know that the payment that is given to Afghan teachers, that's already taxed, right? The 8% is already taxed. So if they're already taking so much taxes, how come they are not okay with opening schools? That's the first thing. The second thing is the government was corrupt. There were no schools made. I agree with you on that end. But then at the same time, when are we going to stop the war on our own kids? Who is willing to be accountable to these kids whose future is all dependent on that education? And the one solution that we do have in place, which Josh had for Soraya, was that what needs to be done? Okay, they don't want to open schools. How about we ban them? Because I think it was the U.S., it was the international community that actually lift the sanctions of travel for all these elite Taliban who are able to travel all across the world, right? So if they can travel freely, how come women cannot travel freely? That's the first thing. How come girls cannot go to school freely? Why can't we do smart sanctions? How is the international community so blind with all this? And how is everyone so okay with it?
Hey, wait, speaking of the international community, I'd like to bring in a piece of video. This is from Michelle Bachelet. She's the High Commissioner for Human Rights at the UN, and she recently visited Afghanistan. Here's what she had to say.
I am listening to women share their experiences and those of their sisters, and I'm speaking to the de facto authorities about the urgent, critical need to make progress towards the realization of women and girls' fundamental human rights and to bring to an end the many serious human rights violations to which women and girls are being subjected. Girls should be able to go to school and university and be empowered to contribute robustly to the future of the country. Women should be visibly represented in the police force, in courts of law, in government, and in the private sector, indeed in every sphere of civic and
Human Rights Watch on their website has an article called 4 Ways to Support Girls' Access to Education in Afghanistan. And the 4 tips are: fund education without funding discrimination. Bastana, I think you touched on that. Support communities as they fight for girls' right to education. Stand by Afghans under threat for defending their right to education. And monitor all aspects of access to education. All right, Zarifah, what were we going to say?
Actually, when we are talking about exactly what the government or international community needs to do right now is when we are talking about abandoning some group for 30 millions of people, that's also something that I will not suggest it, like, because if I am making 30 million of people living in that country, paying for that thousands of people that I want to, or maybe international community want to abandon that. then it's not so normal and it's not so human. But when we are really talking about taking something so concrete on the ground, we need to just take everything so accountable. As Pashana said, it's not just the money, Pashana, from the borders or from the customs. It's the money that millions of dollars have been donated by international community, by UN to Afghan government, de facto government right now in Afghanistan, like whoever is ruling the country right now. They have millions of dollars, but still we don't have like, there are so much more colleagues from government that I know they didn't receive their salaries. Not only teachers, but everyone who have been working. There are so many women and men in the governmental system that they have been working like for months within the government, Taliban de facto government time as well. But
Zarifa, can I ask you though, access to education isn't an economic barrier as much as an ideological barrier in Afghanistan, right?
Actually, it's nothing about ideological. It's not about traditional something. It's whatever we have. It's like two important crises in Afghanistan. That's why we have this educational problems. One, it was security, that the Taliban was themselves big reason for that. And the second is how we use millions of dollars in Afghanistan, and we couldn't really monitor that in the best way, and we couldn't really use it in the right way.
Right.
My point is, Josh, like, there are millions of dollars pouring into Afghanistan. I agree with Zarifa on this, and I totally agree with Women for Women and what Story has said right now, that there is education, the employment rate is being reduced. I'm not actually pointing out at the economic situation right now. I'm talking about the discrimination that you can just pinpoint, that schools for boys are open throughout Afghanistan when it comes to policies, right? Tomorrow we'll see that. But why are the few schools still closed in the southern region of Afghanistan or the eastern region? Why is that? We need to understand that, and that's the first way to unpack this. And the second thing is, yes,
but wait, Pastana, answer the question. Why are the schools closed in the southern part and the eastern part of Afghanistan?
Because the Taliban are not on the same page, because the Taliban are not the same uniform government that they'd like the world to believe. And they are not, so if they are not uniform, I wouldn't like to call them a government, they are a regime, and that's what they do. But then at the same time, their policies towards women, they are not same policies. Apart from that, how come they are okay with putting all the women at home from the workforces? How are they okay with putting all those economic poverty onto women and then still be asking the world for legitimacy? And how is the world okay with giving that legitimacy? The reason I'm posing these questions here, because this program still remembers that there are girls who are supposed to be in schools tomorrow. The 99% of the international media community doesn't even care that the girls are supposed to be in school. And if they are not, this needs to be a news, right?
Hey, I've got about a minute left here. Story, I want to return to the Women for Women report. At the end, it has recommendations, and this one is the international community must hold the de facto government accountable to their commitment to reopen secondary classrooms to girls and women beyond class 6, which is age 11 to 12, this week. How should the international community hold the government there accountable for this?
Based on research from women, they are sure. They know that they don't have the power, but international community has the power to advocate on behalf of their right. That's why they want international community to advocate and get engaged and with de facto government to
all right, Story.
to remind them their commitment.
I'm going to end it there, but I am going to say this about the international community, is that Al Jazeera English is going to be watching those schools, see if they open in Afghanistan or not. So I want to thank my guests, Pastana, Story, and Zarifa. We got to leave it there for today, but thank you for coming and for watching, and we'll see you in the stream next time.